Kat. My name is Sims McGrath. I'm the Director of Marketing for Pavlok, and we're going to be talking today about quitting your sugar addiction forever. As we go, please feel free to ask questions. I'm going to be doing a Q&A at the end, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you guys have about Pavlok or sugar or some of the processes and science that I talk about today. So I'm going to get right into it with the presentation here. So by the end of this presentation, you are going to know how to and what sugar does to your brain and body when you eat it, why it's so hard to quit that sugar and stay sugar-free. As everybody knows, sugar addiction is a very real thing that plagues many of us. And I'm going to teach you guys how you can quit sugar for good using a very simple method that you can learn in hours and you can complete in just a matter of days. So first, let me start out by giving a little background on what sugar is. Derived from sucrose, it's a complex carbohydrate. It can be made up of sometimes two or more simple sugars that are bound together. It comes in a number of different forms. If you look over on the right-hand side, you can see that there are monosaccharides, which are one molecule, mono, or disaccharides, which are two monosaccharides linked together. And some terms you've heard before, glucose, which is a very, very basic form of sugar. That's what your blood uses to transport sugar around your body. And when diabetics talk about glucose levels, or sucrose, which is a disaccharide, that's table sugar. That's just a mixture of glucose and fructose. So it can take a number of different forms, but the gist is that they're all broken down into glucose by your body, which is why you get that sugar high or sugar rush that you feel after eating sugary foods and drinks, because your body is getting absolutely hammered with sugar and it's having to break it down very, very quickly into glucose, and it's flooding your bloodstream with that glucose. So let's just get the elephant in the room out of the way right now. The reason we're all here is that sugar is not good for you. We all want to reduce our intake of it. Best case scenario, sugar is contributing to an unhealthy diet for you or someone you love. And a worst case scenario, it could be killing you or someone you love. Sugar is just as addictive as so many other drugs, as I'll talk about as we go along here. But it is actually very, very dangerous. So a couple quick facts. This is particular to the U.S. If we have any international attendees today, please understand it's just easier for me to get facts for the U.S. because that's where we're based. But sugar is the leading cause of obesity here in the United States. And there are more than 70 health disorders that are directly linked to sugar consumption. Some of the nastiest ones you probably know about: diabetes, heart disease, but also gout, arthritis, and cancer in some cases are actually linked to sugar consumption and overconsumption. And the worst part is sugar has no nutritional value whatsoever. It's literally worthless. It's just there to make things taste good. It doesn't add anything to the food you're eating. That's why they call it empty calories. It provides you with nothing of value. And the scariest thing is PET scans have shown that sugar has similar effects and addictive consequences on the human brain as cocaine. So that's pretty wild. People don't always treat sugar like a drug. We don't talk about sugar like we even talk about alcohol. It's just so common in our society. But it literally twists your brain around and makes your brain release chemicals the same way very, very serious class 1 drugs do. So people should be taking sugar much more seriously. And the other wild part is that sugary drinks account for almost 10% of average calories consumed in the U.S. That's just sugary drinks. That's not other sugary like foods or any food that has sugar added to it. A lot of zero-calorie foods have sugar in them. And actually, I'm going to pause for just a second here, and I want to do a little poll. I want everybody to answer the question that's going to pop up on the screen here, which is, what type of sugar habit do you want to break most? So everybody, if you could answer quickly. I'm probably going to close the poll after maybe like 60 seconds here. But I want to get a sense of what everybody is hoping to work on at the end of this presentation. All right, cool. The numbers are coming in. And I don't know if you guys can see this, but I'll just read it off to you. It looks like a little under 20% are looking to break a candy addiction or an addiction to sugary drinks. A little under 10% of folks want to break an addiction they have involving ice cream. 23% are having trouble controlling their chocolate intake, and then a full 32% of you guys have other foods with added sugars that you want to cut down on, which is actually kind of amazing. I'm glad I did this poll. I wasn't expecting that at all, that there are so many people who have these other foods that they're grappling with. I'm going to close the poll right now, but thank you guys for responding. So yeah, that's really interesting. It ends up being 36% of people have other foods with added sugar that they want to cut down on. And second was candy and chocolate. So those especially, those are just pure sugar. You're just dumping sugar into your body. So let's keep going with the presentation, and we're going to keep those numbers in mind as we move on here. So I'm going to stick a little bit longer with some of the background here and some of the scary facts. In the last roughly 200 years, sugar consumption in the U.S. has increased 1,600%. So it went from about 7 pounds per person over the course of a year in the early 1800s to 130 pounds per person today. So that's nearly a full-size human. That's a human child in sugar that you eat every year as an American. That's incredible. It's obviously too much, we all know well. And this is how sugar affects the human brain. I was comparing it earlier to some other very serious drugs, and look at the similarity between brain scans taken when somebody is eating sugar and when somebody is taking cocaine. So these studies suggest that every time we eat sweets, we're actually reinforcing those neural pathways that cause the brain to become increasingly hardwired to crave sugar. And you actually build up a tolerance like any other drug. I'm going to get to that in just a minute. The tolerance is actually what drives those cravings, that uncontrollable need to eat sugar. So a lot of these studies involve the dopamine system, which is one of two main reward systems, but the dopamine provides a stronger, more immediate pleasure. So if you look at this graph, you see the letters VTA, and it actually is an acronym for ventral tegmental area. It's a part of your brain that actually sits right on top of the brainstem. It's very central in the brain, and it distributes dopamine throughout the brain. So when it's actually traveling to your prefrontal cortex, it goes through the nucleus accumbens there and into the prefrontal cortex, and that's what triggers that pleasurable response whenever you're having sugar. So it's widely implicated in the drug and natural reward circuitry of the brain. To summarize, VTA equals drug and natural reward circuitry. That's how you get pleasure from drugs like sugar. And here's a little comparison, continuing with how sugar affects the human brain. You can see in each of these graphics, there is an image of a brain that is receiving some sort of stimulus. Either, somebody's smoking, an alcoholic, somebody who's overweight and is eating food, or someone is using cocaine. On top are people who are addicts to that quote-unquote drug. And on the bottom, people who are not. They're normal, we'll call it. And this is what the dopamine receptors look like in those two different groups. Now, if you look at it, it might seem funny. And you're right. If you look and see on the bottom, it actually looks like it's more active. That's true. The dopamine receptors are more active in a normal person. We're going to jump back to where I was saying the trigger that makes you want to crave the sugar. What happens is that when someone experiences a reward, say while they're eating a really good meal, their dopamine levels spike. That's the red that you see in this graph here. For addicts, the opposite is true. Here's the wild part. That spike in dopamine only comes in anticipation of the reward as opposed to the actual reward itself. So have you ever eaten sugar and you're just salivating? You can't help but think about it, how it would taste, and you eat it, and you're left totally unsatisfied. You feel empty. You're disgusted with yourself. That's because of its addictive qualities. It's only exciting to you before you get it. You're trained to want it. But as soon as you get it, your dopamine levels actually plummet. And it's unsatisfying when you actually have that supposed reward. So the effects are blunted when you actually get it because the brain has already been pre-flooded with dopamine just thinking about that sugar. So you guys have all heard this quote before. I eat because I'm unhappy, and I'm unhappy because I eat. Based on what I just showed you, this all makes sense now, doesn't it? You get that flood of dopamine right before you eat, and then as soon as you've done it, it's no longer satisfying. You don't feel good about what you just did. Many people don't have control over their sugar eating behavior, leading to this vicious cycle of cravings, crashes, cravings, crashing. And we're going to help you break that today. And here's some of the symptoms. Some of these must be familiar to you guys. Being tired all the time for no obvious reason, being edgy, being confused or foggy, irritable, cranky, short-fused. All of these things are due to your volatile blood sugar. As you're pounding your body with sugar whenever you eat a sugary food, you're flooding your system with glucose. It spikes. You get that rush, but then you get that crash as your body says, oh, wow, all right, enough glucose in the system. We're going to cut off production. And it all washes away, and you start the cycle new. And that's what makes you restless and edgy, and you go through cycles of being tired and wired. And this inconsistency is not good psychologically. So as I mentioned before, there's a problem here. Sugar addiction is the leading cause of obesity in America. It's not much different in many other first world nations. I think it's the exact same in the UK and a couple of the European nations. It's a very, very serious problem. And current solutions don't work. I'm assuming that at least a couple people on here made a New Year's resolution this year. I know I did, and I'm even having trouble with my New Year's resolution. Willpower alone is not effective. Less than 10% of people achieve the New Year's resolution, and that's often relying on willpower alone. Never a good idea, you guys. And things like diets don't actually reduce cravings. They make them even worse. Because sugar eating is an addiction, you go through the same withdrawal symptoms that other addicts go through. So when your body's not being fed sugar, those cravings become stronger and stronger and stronger, making you essentially helpless. You can't stop wanting sugar until you get it. And this is all caused by what's called a reptile brain, the basal ganglia. This powers the instincts and controls most of what we do. You guys may or may not know, but we spend somewhere between 40 and 50% of any given day of our lives in habit mode. We go through things totally automatic. Like when you get out of bed, what's the first thing you do? I bet you if you could put paint on your feet, you would put your feet in the same exact spot on the floor every time you get out of bed in the morning. You are wired to do things a certain way. And the same goes for addiction. Once you get into that cycle, you're essentially training your brain to want it, not just because of the sugar rush, but because of the automatic motion of lifting your hand to your mouth. You see that sugary item that you crave, and you just know that I eat that. It's something you do automatically. So these things, unfortunately, reinforce this addiction that you have, making it much harder to break the cycle. But here's the exciting thing. Imagine an alternate world where there was a way you could permanently break that addiction. It was 10 times more effective than any medication or diet program you've ever been on, with none of the serious side effects. Anybody who's ever tried to do a detox knows how miserable and uncomfortable you can be after that detox. You just end up hungry and tired and groggy. And what if this method was backed by 80 years of peer-reviewed clinical research and was even pre-certified by the FDA? Well, the really exciting thing is it exists. It's Pavlok. We are so excited about the habit-changing power of this device. It's actually the first ever consumer-accessible device that uses aversion therapy to break bad habits at their source. Aversion therapy has been used in a laboratory setting for years, but it's never been available to the general consumer until now. So for those of you who aren't already familiar, I'll just describe it really quickly. It's a small module that can be worn anywhere on the body. You can see it on the screen here alongside the wristband, but you could even put it in like a Tegaderm patch and put it somewhere in your body. We're working on a necklace version. There's any number of ways to wear it. So Pavlok works by administering a vibration beat or a safe electric stimulus that actually reduces cravings and permanently breaks the bad habits, in this case, sugar. So the way it works is you would pair the stimulus from Pavlok with the undesired action. When your brain associates that stimulus with the action, you actually develop an aversion. So again, we're going back to targeting that basal ganglia, the habit center of your brain. Things that are responsible for happiness, sadness, fight or flight, really basic human emotions. We're targeting that with a stimulus from Pavlok. And what that does is every time you feel that uncomfortable electric stimulus from the device, it's making your brain associate that feeling with the food or sugar, and you're training your brain to not want that. So not only are you reducing cravings, you're actually training away any desire to eat at all that particular food. So here's an example of how it might work. We have what we call our 5-minute, 5-day method, where you purposely perform your bad habit for 5 minutes a day for 5 days. Now, that doesn't seem like much, but the stimulus from Pavlok is very uncomfortable. It's not painful, but it's definitely enough that you don't want it repeated. And every time you do it, you continue doing it, even if you feel like your habit is broken. For 5 minutes straight for 5 days, most people actually see great progress on the first and second day, but we say, no, keep going all the way through the 5th day just to make sure that habit is killed dead. It's that effective. And actually, there's been quite a bit of scientific studying, and there's a lot of scientific proof of its effectiveness. Aversion therapy has been around for a long time. And here's an example of a group who used aversion therapy to achieve a sustained weight loss of over 9 pounds in the test subjects. So what they did is they had everybody who's a part of the test group, and part of the group used aversion therapy. In this case, it was a noxious odor. In the case of Pavlok, it would be the uncomfortable electrical sensation. And then the other group was not given any sort of aversion therapy. And the group that used aversion therapy actually lost over 9 weeks, which is a pretty short time span. That's just over 2 months. They lost over 13 pounds, while the other group, which did not use aversion therapy, only lost 1 pound. And then after 48 weeks, nearly a year later, the group that used aversion therapy actually maintained, for the most part, that weight loss. They maintained 9.17 pounds of weight loss compared to the control group, which actually gained weight over their baseline weight, over 1 pound. So the control group, which did not use aversion therapy, was not as successful initially, and in the long run was much less successful. Whereas aversion therapy created long-lasting effects for those who used it. So this is just one example of how effective Pavlok can be at breaking a bad habit. And it's not just the scientific studies. We've actually had everyday users have incredible success with Pavlok. I have 2 great examples that I'll share with you guys right now, which is Tasha and Ari. So Ari is the founder of Less Doing, More Living, a popular online blog where he helps others by providing tips and helpful insights to make each person's life better. But Ari has something called Crohn's disease, and it causes significant inflammation of the lining of the digestive tract, and this was being made worse by Ari's addiction to sugar. So Ari bought a Pavlok, and he started using it, and he actually saw results within 24 hours. He did a video blog, which we're going to post on the website. Tasha is already on the website. You can go to pavlok.com/blog to see a lot of these user success stories. But Ari was able to see a difference in his habit in 24 hours. He significantly cut down on his sugar intake, and he did the full 5-day program. And in his testimonial, he explained that he has virtually eliminated sugar from his diet, significantly increasing his control over his Crohn's disease. So it's not just about reducing the cravings, getting control over your eating. It can actually make a difference in your lifestyle. For anybody who has type 2 diabetes, it's the same way. If you reduce your sugar intake, you reduce the spikes in your blood sugar. It makes it much easier to go about your daily life. And Tasha saw similar success. She was actually able to cut down on her sugar intake in only 2 days. And her testimonial was kind of an interesting one in that she put Pavlok on, and just wearing it was aversion enough for her that she did not want to continue eating sugar. She didn't like the idea of having to press the button to trigger Pavlok, and just that alone discouraged her from eating sugar. And after a week, 2 weeks, and 3 weeks, she had cut down her sugar intake by over 80%. So we did a survey. We actually are regularly doing surveys of Pavlok users, asking how users are doing breaking their different bad habits. And we weren't really sure what to expect. We knew that in a lot of clinical trials for a number of different habits, that Pavlok can be somewhere between 50 and 75% successful, but we were amazed when we looked at the survey results of over 100 people surveyed. 86% were successful in using Pavlok to either drastically cut down or quit eating sugar entirely. I mean, 86% is not even in the same ballpark as any other method. It is so far out there. It's so much more successful than anything else. It's hard to even compare them. For example, I gave you New Year's resolutions are successful less than 10% of the time. Diets have a pretty similar success rate. All the fad diets out there, like South Beach and Paleo, well, they might work for specific health issues. For the most part, the average person who's just trying to cut down their sugar intake, they're going to be completely and totally ineffective. And that's where aversion therapy comes in. It's about changing your desire for the particular item, in this case sugar, at its core, in the heart of your brain. So we're kind of getting to the end of my presentation here. I want to make you guys a nice offer for hanging in there and listening and learning with me. So in addition to Pavlok being so successful, we actually found another product, which I'm excited to share with you guys today, which is called Knockout Sugar. And when paired with Pavlok, it brings the success rate to near 100% for people trying to quit sugar. So essentially, what Knockout Sugar is a herbal supplement that is derived from a root native to central and southern India called Gymnema sylvestre. And excuse me if I kind of botch that pronunciation. I'm never good with pronunciation. But the really cool thing is it has these interesting sweetness-suppressing qualities. And what Knockout Sugar does is isolate the effective compounds in Gymnema sylvestre. And it's concentrated. And when you spray it on your tongue, it doesn't taste like anything, but it blocks the sugar receptors in your tongue. So in addition to having the aversion therapy of Pavlok, whatever you're doing your habit, you can also never even receive the satisfaction of tasting the sugar. So say your problem is candy, like a number of you responded to the poll. Every time you eat a piece of candy, if you spray Knockout Sugar first, it won't taste like anything. It'll just be this weird, gummy feeling in your mouth, and it's kind of disgusting, honestly. I tried it myself. Manish and I recorded a video where I did it, and it was really weird. I tried a granola bar with it too, which are surprisingly high in sugar, for those of you who don't know. And the granola bar just like tasted like bread, and it was disgusting. I did not want to do it at all. And that combined with Pavlok, I could definitely see anyone being able to break their sugar addiction in a matter of days. So what I'm going to offer you guys, because you're here on the webinar with me, is the opportunity to get Pavlok and Knockout Sugar for a nice $30 discount. Normally we sell both for $199. The price of Pavlok alone is $169. If you purchase using the link at the top, pavlok.com/no-sugar, then you'll get that $30 discount, but it's only available to those people who are live on the webinar right now. When we end the webinar tonight and we go offline, I'm recording this right now. It'll be available to anybody who wants to rewatch it, but the deal is not available after we end the webinar. So I'm going to take Q&A right now. If you're interested in taking advantage of this deal, please go to that link, purchase a Pavlok and Knockout Sugar, start breaking your addiction right now. We ship next day, so it leaves our warehouse very next day. It can be to you if you're in the United States within 2 to 5 days, and you can start breaking your addiction right now. If you feel like you're slipping on your New Year's resolution, or this is just a great time to get started on breaking your sugar addiction, go ahead, take advantage of this offer. We never discount Pavlok or Knockout Sugar. This is the first time we're doing it, so I hope you guys will go ahead and take advantage of that. And I want to answer questions right now. So anybody who has questions, please type them into the question box, and I'm happy to answer all of them. Okay, hang on. Let me start reading questions, and I go through. Oh, I have one person who just wanted to know what my name was. That's easy. My name is Sims, S-I-M-S. Last name McGrath, M-C-G-R-A-T-H. And actually, I want to help you guys out directly. If you want to email me and ask me any questions, please. My email is sims@pavlok.com. I'm happy to answer any questions offline after the webinar as well. Next question from Preet is, I get the same response as pasta, rice, and potatoes as with sugar, and it's the same as you described. Would your program help with them too? Okay, well, first of all, let me explain why that happens. So grains are also carbohydrates, and carbohydrates are broken down into sugar very quickly. Unlike fat, which is hard to break down, carbohydrates get broken down very quickly. So that's why you feel that rush of energy and a big crash afterwards when you're eating grains like pasta, rice, and potatoes, because they're essentially rich in sugar. I mean, potatoes in particular. People who have type 2 diabetes cannot eat potatoes. It's a huge no-no. Anybody who has type 2 diabetes knows when you talk to your doctor, potatoes are totally off the table. Again, it's because of all that sugar. Yes, Pavlok can help with that. It's the same thing. All you're doing is building an aversion to whatever item you pair the sensation from Pavlok with. So if you want to quit eating potatoes, just make a pot of potatoes, or however you choose to cook them, and every time you take a bite of a potato, press the button on Pavlok, and it'll train your brain to have an aversion to potatoes. Daniel's asking, I'm a developer. Does Pavlok have an SDK that lets developers write apps which connect to the device? That's an awesome question, and I feel really bad for not addressing that when I presented Pavlok to you guys. The answer is yes. So in addition to manually administering the electrical stimulus, you can pair Pavlok with your smartphone. We have an Android and iOS app. You can adjust the strength of the stimulus. So some people need only a very light electrical stimulus. Some people need a slightly stronger one. You can adjust it to suit yourself. And because we can pair with a smartphone, we actually can be triggered by any connected sensor. So say your bad habit is snacking late at night, you could put a sensor on your fridge that knows when the door opens, or you can just buy a smart fridge, or GE makes one, that knows when the door is open, and every time you open that door, it can automatically trigger Pavlok. So if you just set a rule where if after 10 p.m. you open the fridge door, Pavlok can automatically be triggered. Right now, we have the ability to integrate with if this, then that. We have a beta testing group, and we plan on releasing it publicly to everybody within the coming weeks. We're also working on an open API so that anybody who's a developer can write their own apps connecting any sensor they want that can automatically trigger Pavlok based on the habit they're performing. So I guess, Daniel, to summarize, the answer is yes, you can automatically trigger Pavlok. We're working on opening up the platform to everybody, and right now we are integrated with if this, then that, and we have a couple of our own apps, so the alarm clock app that you can use. Chris is asking, since alcohol is sugar, do the drops help with that? Yes, to a certain extent. So a lot of alcohol is very sweet. Not something like whiskey, but think like champagne or wine or liqueurs. And knockout sugar can help with that. It does make a big difference because it will change the taste. Like, you know how when you were young and your parents let you have a beer for the first time or let you have a glass of wine for the first time and it tasted disgusting. And as your palate matured, you got older, you actually grew to like it. I guarantee that when you put knockout sugar on your tongue and take a sip for the first time, it's going to taste completely different and it will be absolutely disgusting all over again. So in addition to getting that aversive stimulus from Pavlok, you are going to have that weird, disgusting, unfamiliar taste whenever you try to drink that sugary alcohol, and that will drastically accelerate the rate at which you're able to cut down on or completely quit your consumption of alcohol. One person's asking, I already have a Pavlok, is there a deal on the no sugar by itself? No, we don't have a deal set up on no sugar by itself, but obviously I want to see you be successful in breaking your bad habit. This is Christy who's asking a question. So Christy, if you email me personally, just email me sims, S-I-M-S, @pavlok.com, then I'll see what I can do to help you out. I'm sure I can make a deal for you since anybody who's buying a Pavlok also gets a deal. I'd love to help you out as well. Let's see. BK asks, can Pavlok work with bulimia? It's a bit of a general question, BK. I'm not totally sure what aspects of bulimia. Certainly, if you are having trouble controlling like bulimic cravings or the urge to eat and then purge, Pavlok probably can help you with those bulimic cravings. So every time you feel a craving to have bulimic behavior, you can trigger Pavlok, and that could train away the desire for you to engage in bulimic behavior. That being said, I do hope that you are speaking with a doctor about that as well, because that is a very, very serious, I guess, it's disease. So yes, Pavlok can help, but I wouldn't rely on Pavlok alone for such a serious disease. Okay, Seth is asking, I've tried using Pavlok to stop cravings and it felt like it worked well for the specific foods I was eating, but I still have cravings for different sugary foods. Do you have advice for making it work for all sugary foods? And Seth is actually asking a really good question here, and it kind of speaks to the root of aversive therapy and aversive conditioning. And that is, you are building an aversion to whatever you associate that sensation with. So if you have a way of associating it with an entire food group, so if you lay out all the foods that you have cravings for on the table, and as you look at them and envision yourself eating them, imagine the taste of all those different foods, you could train away a lot of the desire just using that method. But it's always going to be most effective if you pair that food, the actual sensation, the scent, the flavor, the texture, all of those senses combined into the aversive therapy sessions. It's going to be much more successful than just envisioning it. So to say that you can train all of them at the same time would be very difficult, but you can certainly train them extremely effectively one by one. Daniel is another question about already having Pavlok, can you get a discount on knockout sugar? Again, Daniel, please just email me directly, sims@pavlok.com. I'd be happy to help you guys out. Shannon is asking, I think I would just replace the bad habit with something else not healthy. What would I do to fill the time with something healthy? Sure, that's actually a really good question, Shannon. And it is an important kind of co-principle to aversion therapy, and that is not just discouraging the bad behavior, but replacing it. And yes, you could replace it with any positive activity. So say you have a bad habit of sedentary eating. So you sit on the couch and watch TV and binge on food, and you don't realize how much food you're binging on because you're distracted. You could use Pavlok whenever you're doing that. So sit on the couch, watch TV, eat the food that you binge on to help build an aversion to those specific circumstances. So eating that food in that location while watching TV. But you could replace it with a healthier activity. So maybe you would, after doing a aversive therapy session, where you sat on the couch, ate the food, and triggered Pavlok, right afterwards, go read a book or go take a walk and treat that as a reward for completing your session. And that can actually train your brain to not only associate negative feelings towards the aversive therapy sessions where you ate your food, but afterwards, when it's all over, you're going and giving yourself a reward by doing something else. So you build a positive connotation to that other habit that you're trying to replace it with. Felicia asked a similar question to what was asked before. Will the program work to end multiple different habits at the same time? You can certainly work on multiple habits at the same time. So say you want to end your sugary eating habit and you want to stop biting your nails, or you want to end 2 different sugary eating habits, both chocolate and candy. You can do both at the same time, but you're going to be much more effective if you focus on one at a time. Really focus your mind on the task at hand and breaking that one habit, and then move on to another one so that you'll have the greatest chance of success. Anne is also asking about knockout sugar, and like I said before, right now we don't have Pavlok plus knockout sugar or knockout sugar by itself available to the general public on the website. That's why I'm offering it as a special incentive just to you guys here on the webinar. If you email me, I can get you a link, I'll get you a discount on knockout sugar, and be sure to get that into your hands. BK is asking a follow-up question, how to get the sensor and connect it. And BK, if you purchase Pavlok, you can download the app from the App Store, and you can connect it with if this, then that. I can give you more detailed instructions if you email me. Just email me, sims@pavlok.com. Filippo is asking, is knockout sugar available outside of the USA? The answer is yes, we do ship internationally. It's a little bit expensive to ship, but again, Filippo, email me. I'll see what we can do to work that out, and hopefully we can get knockout sugar into your hands, because like I said at the beginning, our goal is to make everybody successful. And it's actually worth noting that our vision at Pavlok, like our big, hairy, audacious goal, is to break 5 million bad habits in the next 5 years. So we're not concerned with revenue. We're not concerned with number of units sold. That doesn't matter to us. What we believe is most powerful and speaks most highly of our product is the number of bad habits that we're able to help users break. So if there's a way that we can help you break a bad habit, we want to hear. Okay, Preet is asking a follow-up question as well. What kind of follow-up process should we do to reinforce the initial program? Do we repeat the process at intervals, and what do you recommend? The absolutely amazing thing about aversion therapy is that once you've broken the habit stays broken. You may need to do some follow-up aversion therapy sessions, but you will be amazed at how effective it is at permanently building an aversion to whatever the food or whatever the habit is that you have. You'll no longer want to eat that sugary food. You know, you'll no longer want to have candy. You'll no longer want to have ice cream. You won't feel any temptation, and it's permanent. That was a really cool thing about the study when they did the follow-up a year later. The people who had used aversion therapy maintained most of their gains, whereas the people who hadn't used it actually lost more ground than they had initially gained. it has this incredible staying power that no other method of breaking bad habits has. Okay. I have Karen is asking the question: if you eat sugar for comfort, i.e., to numb out, does Pavlok work for that type of situation as well? The answer is yes. It is very effective at that, mostly because when you're numbing out, you're essentially entering a comfort zone. You're doing that, you're performing that bad habit. You're eating the sugar because you essentially want to shut your brain off. You want to enter like this comfortable, lethargic state. And when you trigger Pavlok, you're snapping yourself out of that comfortable state. So what was sort of a happy place for you is no longer happy. Your brain is, it's time, this uncomfortable sensation with what was supposed to be kind of a veg out moment, and it's no longer a pleasurable experience for you. So you're actually going to find that if you use Pavlok, you'll be able to train away that habit amazingly quickly because you're no longer feeling that sensation of comfort or relaxation whenever you perform that bad habit. It becomes a time when you're uncomfortable. Okay, I'm going to keep looking through. And actually, I know a lot of you guys are having some trouble with the audio, so I'm going to spell out my email. Hopefully you can all see that in the chat window. Please feel free to drop me an email with any follow-up questions. For those of you who are interested in just getting knockout sugar spray, just email me with a subject line, webinar knockout sugar, and I'll be able to get back to you over the weekend, and we can get you a discount code on the knockout sugar. And I think that pretty much wraps up the questions. I'm going to call it a night, you guys. Thank you so much for joining me. This was an awesome experience. I'm really inspired by a lot of your questions. It sounds like a lot of you guys are really motivated to quit that bad habit, and that Pavlok is a great way forward for you to be able to do that. So please take advantage of the offer. When I close the webinar, the price is going to go back up to $199 for Pavlok and knockout sugar, save for those of you who are emailing me right now asking for the information, which will get taken care of. I'll make sure to get you a code. Please take advantage of this offer, and I really wish all of you the best with breaking bad habits. We'll make the recording available. If you haven't already, follow us on Facebook, and we'll publish it there so you guys can watch again, and you can keep up to date with other Pavlok news. So thank you guys so much for joining us.